Okay, so we left the last episode in a state of disarray. Half our team has just been bought, including our 3 highest rated players. So what can we do to fix that? Well, first of all, why don't we change our tactics? We find out that Man City's 4-3-3 will probably fit our new team like a glove, but it means we're definitely going to need to sign a new left winger and a new central midfielder. Maybe it's time to use one of the rules we've not used yet. Can you think of a team that have a very good left winger and a very good centre midfielder that is also Basque? Well, to be honest, Arsenal would be one team that has this kind of player, but also Sociedad. And the first move we make is to bribe Baron Zeta to betray Real Sociedad. He's not the biggest name, sure, but it's going to be a pretty big blow for our rivals. A few minutes later, on the same day, we also trigger Zubamendi's release clause, and there's nothing they can do about it. We again offer him a huge wage and an even bigger bribe to accept our offer. We didn't actually think he would accept, but here he is walking into our training ground. And walking the other way, Nico finally confirms his move to Milan. I hope he enjoys it there because he's now the second most expensive player of all time, and that puts a lot of pressure on a young player's shoulders. We round off our very busy transfer window by recalling Alvaro Jallo and buying a couple of backup players that are going to fill out our bench. There's no doubt looking at our squad that we're definitely weaker now than we were at the start of January, but that's exactly what we've set these rules to try to do. Now we just have to build up this set of players to be as good as our last set were and see how far we can get. So while all of this was happening, we did actually manage to beat Leipzig in the Champions League, but we did lose quite heavily to Bayern Munich. Still, we're through into the knockout rounds and drawn against Porto. If you can't remember, our objective is to try and get to the semi-final of the Champions League this year. If we don't, we'll probably have to win the league, but we need to start off well here against Porto. And it's annoyingly a very wet night in Portugal. There's a lot of pressure on us because of the board objectives, and last season, we actually only won 1 knockout game and lost in the quarterfinals. This year, expectations are a little bit higher, and I think the players know what's at stake because we did start off pretty badly. Or maybe it's better to say Porto started really aggressively, encouraged by the home crowd, no doubt. Within 6 minutes, there was a scramble in our box, and that had us feeling pretty nervous. Porto would burst through, have a few rebounds, and they could have gone ahead, but thankfully missed all of them. We were pinned back for the rest of the half, unable to really string any passes together. It felt like a goal for Porto was almost inevitable. All we had to do is try and prevent that. Around the half an hour mark, their towering target man Samu would muscle his way through our defence, holding off Vivian before laying it off to Jamie. 1 touch, 1 strike, and it was 1-0 to Porto. We needed a spark, and it was actually Baron Azea who provided it. The new signing, whose move from Sociedad definitely raised some eyebrows, but he began to grow into this game. In this bit of play, he combined with Zubamendi, who was of course another former Sociedad man, and he got a decent shot off, but it was blocked. The whole reason we went for Zubamendi over someone like Moreno was to take control of games, and he really did exactly that just before half time. He played through even Martin. Martin would surge forward, scanning for options, and he would find Baron at Zaya. He would cut inside his marker and unleash a curling shot past the goalkeeper. A perfect debut for the former Sociedad player. Porto seemed quite rattled from this. Their passing grew a bit sloppy, and Martin would pounce on the ball. Intercepting a loose ball in midfield, he spotted Baron at Zaya's run into space. It was a really good cross, and he found Iñaki perfectly in stride, and the striker would lash it home to make it 2-1. Taking the lead in a knockout round game is always a good position to be in, and the rest of the match was basically Ruiz de Galarreta and Zubamendi running around, kicking as many Porto midfielders as they could, and that was enough to get the game back to the San Mamés with us ahead. When the final whistle blew, we left the pitch with a pretty hard-earned win, and for the first time, a small sense of security that we maybe could be doing something special in the Champions League. Both games being in the rain would have seemed like a nightmare normally, but I thought we actually did quite well away in Portugal. Because of our bigger squad, we were actually able to rest some of our higher rated players for the league games in between these 2 matches, so we did actually have a mostly fit squad. The same couldn't be said for Porto, who actually started off the game quite tired. The first 10 minutes proved their tiredness. Baronet Zaya was still trying to prove his worth, and he was just a constant threat down the left. His attempts to break through kept getting stopped though, either by the slippery conditions or by some very aggressive defending from Porto. He had another chance just a few minutes later, and with the goal at his mercy, his shot would sail wide, but despite how well he's been playing, this is the kind of shot that Nico would have buried if we hadn't been forced to sell him. Porto would begin to find their rhythm a little bit later. They would find a couple of gaps in our defence. Pepe would dance past 3 defenders and play through Samu, and Aguirre Zabala was once again our saviour when he rushed out to deny him. We were still clinging on to the aggregate lead, but only just. We changed both of our wingers and fullbacks early in the second half, and really we were playing with 4 centre-backs on the pitch. Literally just a few seconds later, a free kick for Porto was floated into the box and Danny Loader was unmarked, his volley finding the net and levelling the tie on aggregate. It's such an annoying goal to concede and such a crucial goal for Porto to score. So, with the game now level on aggregate, just before the end of the match we actually thought we'd played in Giallo, but just a tiny bit of his knee was offside. It's so annoying. Porto would actually have the last attack and probably only their second attack of the game just before the end, and if we concede here we're out. Thankfully though, the long shot is awful and that means it's going to extra time. We were actually so close to getting in behind a few times in extra time. The best chance was probably this one with Iñaki. He didn't quite have enough pace or enough fitness to beat his defender. In the second half of extra time, we played some head tennis in the middle, but couldn't quite create a chance. It was also a few minutes later that we realised that Vencedor was playing injured and we couldn't sub him off. That's really not great if this goes to penalties and he has to take one. In fact, with just a few seconds left, Porto would try and prevent penalties. They drove into the box, but Uri was there again. What a slide tackle that was, and that confirms it. There is going to be a penalty shootout, and basically our whole career is on the line. Okay, so usually when I make these videos, what I do is I play the matches and I write some script so I know what I'm going to say in the videos to make it a bit more polished. But for this penalty shootout, we're going fully live comm, and I've already checked through our squad, and we have about 3 players that I think are good enough to take a penalty. So this is going to be really tense and probably going to have some quite fast circles moving. Alvaro Giallo taking our first one. Decent penalty, top corner. Goalie looked like he was diving that way. I think Montez is going to go right here, so let's dive. It's gone left. Okay, it's 3-3. Look how fast this circle's moving. Let's smash this in the top right. Come on, Iñaki. Okay, good. Goalie dives the wrong way yet again. But can we actually save one? This is Danny Loader, the guy that scored against us. No, he's done a little chip there off to the left. I always think it's risky to go down the middle, but thankfully the goalie dives out the way of it. Sometimes the AI, when you go down the middle, is so good at saving them, so we're probably going to keep going corners for the rest of this penalty shootout. Samu, this guy's got a lot of power on this. We dived the right way. If you put any less, I think we've saved it. We're so far into this penalty shootout and no one has actually missed yet. So if we save this, we're through. We thought he was going to chip it down the middle. That would have been absolutely hilarious. Azpilicueta is looking nervous. His circle was so fast, but yeah, the goalie dives the right way, but way too late. I'm getting so nervous with these penalties, man. The 9th one in a row goes in and we can finally save one. Come on, Otavio, their centre-back. We dive the right way, it goes underneath us. Oh my god, that was so close. I know I said I wasn't going to go down the middle, but let's Panenka. Oh, that is so embarrassing. The Panenka down the middle has been saved, and now Scally can be the man to beat us. Of course he does. We go the wrong way. He puts it in the top corner, and we're out of the Champions League. I'll have to try and write up something pretty interesting to say because I can't really think of anything except so much disappointment that we're out against Porto. Okay, so we're out of the Champions League. That's not so shocking. Porto are a decent team and we have lost 3 of our best players in less than 3 weeks, but there's no denying that we're in a pretty bad state right now. Basically, if we look at the objectives, the board are saying if we don't end up winning the league this year, our career is over. We'll be sacked, probably if we're ever not in first place, and we've still got to play 12 more games, including games against Barcelona, Atletico Madrid, and Real Madrid, so this could be an awful end to our season. We have to hope that we can open a huge lead on Barcelona, and that's so unlikely, so things have never been so precarious. Weirdly though, the board are still pretty happy with us going into the Mallorca game, and that's pretty good to see. I mean, depending on the Barcelona match, a win here could see us go top, and it's also our 100th game as manager. Let's hope that we can make it to at least 150 and finally get that Champions League win. Mallorca themselves are nothing special. We've actually beaten them twice already this year, once in the Cup and once in the league. And annoyingly, the rain came down for a 3rd match in this episode, which, as always, makes any kind of flowing football almost impossible. Sometimes you just have to keep the ball in the air, and Baronet Zia did exactly that. His cross was so close to connecting with Asensio's head, but Mallorca's keeper was just tall enough to catch it. Our biggest threat, as always, was our counter-attacks, and they were so slow, being totally bogged down by the conditions. Iñaki had a pretty good opportunity in the first half, but his initial shot was saved, the header was also saved, and his third header went out for a throw-in on the other side of the pitch. We were playing pretty frustrated at this point, and Asensio earned a yellow card for a pretty hard challenge on the keeper. We were so desperate to try and win the ball, and time was really ticking away. We just had to find a way through. We only had a few minutes left, and we had to win the ball off Mallorca. Morlanes would intercept one of our sloppy passes, and he threaded the ball through to Asano. One clinical finish later, our worst fears were realised. We were losing to Mallorca, and there was actually boos coming from the crowd. The game ended, and walking off the pitch, I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe the axe was about to fall. Would we get one more chance to try and save our career? Or if we did, it was going to be against Celta Vigo. Celta Vigo are a weird squad because they have a couple of really good players and the rest of their team is pretty bad. We're also going to have to play a pretty bad team though, and this is definitely not our first choice attack in this game against Celta Vigo. Still, we have faith in Asensio even if he's not had the best first season with us. Just as we're feeling like off the pitch we've lost the dressing room, we got some proof that we haven't. Rodriguez proved we still have him on our side. His crunching block denying Celta Vigo's man Aspas in the box, and that could be crucial. Ivan Martin would block a pass in midfield. It would drop to Asensio, passes it out to Borges Sainz. The ball goes back to Asensio, and Martin is played through. Just when we need someone to have our back, Ivan Martin is the man. What a start we're having. Ivan Martin plays in Asensio and his shot nearly finds the far corner. Barane can't quite slide in there at the far post. 20 minutes pass and we get a free kick in a pretty decent place. We pass it back, try and open up space for a shot. Uri plays it to Vivian, who loses the ball. Out of nowhere, Ivan Martin tries to block it and Vecino goes down from this attempt. Surely this can't be a second yellow card. Well, in the words of Mick McCarthy, it can. And we're down to 10 men. We get one more chance just before half-time. Sainz tries to hold off about 6 defenders, and eventually Celta Vigo would win the ball back, and that's half-time. We just have to try and hold on for another half of the match, and maybe we can rebuild our entire career. Well, to do that, we'll need our defence to be on fire, and they actually totally forget how to keep a defensive line, and that gives Celta Vigo a close-range shot, but thankfully is saved at the near post. Barane would get played a really nice ball by Asensio and goes for the pull across the signs instead of shooting. It was a bad decision and I think we could definitely have scored from that chance. In the 76th minute, a 76-year-old Iago Aspas would fizz one at the far post, and we actually press so hard for the rest of the game that Celta have the ball in their 6-yard box for longer than they have it in our half. But with the win confirmed, do we really have a chance of keeping our job? Well, with this win, we're ready to go straight into a game against Real Madrid. But before we can, we get the message we didn't want to see. We've been fired, and I really don't understand career mode sometimes, because I actually reloaded my save after the Porto game to see if it was possible to go further than this and save the series for you guys. Well, I simulated about 100 different games to make sure we're first, and guess what? The furthest we could ever get is the Real Madrid game. Even if we played this Real Madrid game on something like beginner or amateur and won 11-0, we would remain first in this alternate universe, but we would still be sacked. In this save, for example, I actually was 4 points clear at the top of the league, beat Real Madrid 12-0 on beginner, and still got sacked. It's as far as we can go, and please believe me when I say I'm so sorry that this is how this series ended. If I'd have known, I wouldn't have started it, and believe me, these objectives are going to be turned off for every other series I do this year. I've actually already got some of Season 3 planned that I'll never be able to do, and if you want to know what's going to happen, I'll put it in the comments below as the pinned comment, but basically, the spare Nico Williams money was going to be spent on Mikel Merino and Emerick Laporte, and Griezmann was actually going to spend his last season in the Basque region before he retired with us, and I think that would have been so fun, but it's just not meant to be. Even though it's ended so disappointingly, I hope you've still enjoyed this series, and I guess you can't win every challenge, but it's still a lot of hours of playing games, editing and uploading for me, and of course a lot of time for you guys too, if you've watched every single episode. I'll be starting a new save very soon, and if you've got any ideas that you want to see me do, leave them in the comments too. But thank you for so much support on this series, and again, I really do apologise if you think I've wasted your time with how things have ended. I think it was still a fun journey, and hopefully you guys do too. But thank you for watching. I'll see you soon. Cheers and goodbye.